Hello, so here's a little video on the UVing of this object, of the radio. So, I'm going to try and make UVing a little bit less intimidating in this video and talk slowly through, try to do my best to try and explain the process and why we do it and why it's important. Literally, the easiest way I found of thinking about it as an abstract concept is as a sticker. So essentially, we're almost like vinyl wrapping this object, but we've got to have the flat version of the sticker, the flat version of the vinyl to paint on top of. That being said, how do you take it from this to a flat version? Well, that's where the difficulty comes in. That's where we got to really think about stuff. Luckily, the tools that we use are quite simple. We don't have anything like the crazy modeling tools. We've only got our projections, which essentially, if I jump into the UV editor, essentially taking something from our scene, say for this, for instance, and basically taking a photograph. And we're taking a photograph from an angle or from a curved angle if it's kind of something like a cylindrical unwrap. Taking a picture of this object and we're laying it out on the UV surface in here. The main purpose of this at the beginning is to just try and make a shape that's a lot more like what we're seeing inside the 3D view. So that's why starting off with the bigger stuff or starting off with the very, very simple stuff is the easiest way to go, because then that's one, it gets us warmed up in using UVs. It also just cleans up the space. So I'm looking around my object. Let's get some UV on the go. So if I just select everything just as an overview before I start, obviously it's a mess. This is naturally what UV is gonna look like as we're modeling through them. So I'm gonna go through and do all the basic flat bits first. So the front kind of fabric panel, I'm just gonna planar project that. And what am I doing with a planar? A planar is a flat plane projection. It's a flat orthographic projection photograph of this object. Orthographic meaning there's no perspective involved with it. None of these will have perspective involved anyway, but orthographic as a general term means non-perspective. So what I've got to do is just look at what direction this is facing. Well, look at my little gimbal down here, or look at my manipulator here, it's facing down the Z-axis, which is the blue one. So I just need to make sure that my planar projection is set to Z, and the keep image width height ratio is turned on. To do that, boom, lays it out like that. And what I'm going to do is just move that off to the side. Like I was saying, I really want to clear this space early on. Before I start really thinking about anything, I'm going to clear this UV space in the middle and then start working on stuff. Some stuff like this is perfectly done. This is actually fully UV'd because it's a flat surface. You know, there's no undulation to it. There's no overhang or anything. So technically this is done, but we're just going to kind of leave it over here for now. And then I'm going to find the other flat surfaces. So for me, it's this. So what I'm going to do to make this a little bit easier than what I did in class is I'm just going to grab this entire back panel, planar project that, so everything gets planar down, but then I'm going to cut stuff away from it. Because one thing we need to do as well is either cut stuff to lay it out, almost like, so if you have a cube which has got one side open and you put that open side on the table, on the desk, and you push down, you're going to start crushing that box because there's no corners where it can fold out and relax. Same thing's going to happen with this. I've got a face on the inside here, a bunch of face on the inside here, that when if I was to try and smooth this to unfold it, this whole interior face area here would want to kind of lie flat as well. So that's going to cause a load of distortion. So when I do this, I've got all this projected down, but I want to cut away these little interior recess bits here. And that's really simple to do because I can select inside the 3D world and then cut inside the UV world. So what I'm going to do is go to edge mode, select this edge, come up to inside my UV view, come up to cut and sew, and then cut. And you know when something's cut because obviously you can select it, but it's also got a thick white line, do you know, on an edge of a UV, so you can tell that I've actually cut that off. So pull that to the side. I'm actually going to do some other stuff with this piece later on, but at the minute, like I said, I'm just going to kind of breaks stuff up into simple shapes, into simple groups. So grab this, do the same thing, cut and sew. You can also see the hotkey for this is Shift X. And I can just grab that, move to the side. So I'll keep these kind of together, and I'll move these off over here, let's say. I'm just going to grab this back radiator panel by itself and just plane out of this. So this is obviously not a flat surface. It has got some actual kind of height to it, some depth to it. And I could come in here and try and solve that and get a correct UV straight from the beginning. However, I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to lay everything out. Sorry about that bit of a computer issue then. So yeah, I don't necessarily need or want to try and get a perfect UV right from the beginning. Again, all I'm trying to do is just project out a shape that's a lot better than this, more reminiscent of this, put it somewhere so then work on it later on. Now for me, looking at this, it's a relatively small object, so I think I'm just going to do another planar projection just to lay it out, and then put it somewhere. So I'm going to say like down here. In fact, I'm just going to step back a sec. I'm just going to grab everything and combine them all together so that I know where everything's kind of laid out as I'm working on it. Okay. So what's next? Other flat things we can do, other flat areas. Well, another area we can do is this back panel area here, like this, all this area here. And you can see how messed up it is in the UV. So I need to go over in here, grab the face behind there. I don't want to forget that. Grab the outside edges. Make sure I've got everything. And again, planar project down, and I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to keep all my front panel stuff over top right, I think. And then I've even got my little VU meter and recessed area here. So in this case, I'm just going to select that back face back there, shift and full stop. I'm going to grow that selection until I've grabbed everything of this little frame. One more, there we go. Again, planar projection, move it over here. Good. So what else have we got left? So here, if we just isolate off, we've got the screws at the back. This is something, like I said before, I should have really been doing these when I first made them, UVing as I've made those of them, and I duplicate off to kind of arrange them on the surface. They're already pre-UV'd. I will end up doing that kind of off screen, and I'll probably do that for the dial and the buttons as well. But everything else, I've got the frame. Well, this little frame going around, I can just planar project that down as well. Again, all I'm trying to do is lay it out flat for now. And then what's left? Okay. The wire. Planar project a little circle thing at the back. Let's put that over here with the rest of the back panels. The wire here. Now this is really nice because either if we do it through the through this version, the 2020 version, where we have the bonus tools curve to ribbon mesh or curve to tube mesh, or if we use the sweep mesh function in 2022, you still get something like this. You still get a basic UV that you can use. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. It's all right. So I'm going to move that over somewhere here because that's already kind of pre-UV'd for us. We still need to fix it up, but it's not bad. Okay, what's left? Okay, well, I'm going to go in and just delete all the bits that I know I'm going to repeat UV. So I'll have one of these left, and I'll have one screw left. Okay. So this last one here, I'm just going to move But I'm just going to leave it there for the time being. I'm just going to remember that it's there. So I'll probably do my frame as well at this point, my frame. So this is a funny one because it's a large surface, and something like this, we want to make sure that we're not creating a lot of obvious seams, because everything, all the main details of this are facing outwards, kind of exposed to the audience very readily. So we want to make sure that we're getting no UVs around, or kind of as few UV seams as possible going around this. Now, unfortunately, this is going to be near impossible, so we just got to think about stuff. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But for this, I'm going to do a bit of a different projection. Everything so far has been a planar projection, all in Z-axis as well, because you're facing forward and back. So for this, though, I'm going to hit my automatic unwrap or automatic projection, which doesn't do all the work for me. What it does is just basically, like I said in class, you have these 6 cameras that are basically taking a photograph of each one of the sides. Any face which is facing within 45 degrees of one of these squares will be put in its own little grouping. So that's laid it out. Enough for me to just, again, just clean up the area. What have we got left? Okay. So I'm just gonna do a bunch of planar projection again just to get these ready and clearing the space. So I'll delete you because I'm going to repeat you. Oh, we got the feet as well. So yeah, completely forgot about these. So I'll get rid of all but one. Same thing. Now for this one, I do want to do a planar, but obviously it's not going to be best doing it in the Z-axis because we're only getting like a tiny little cross section there. So I got to think, okay, what direction is this predominantly facing? It's going to be facing the Y-axis. Even though it's facing downwards, it's still the Y-axis. So I change that to the Y-axis, project, cool, and then I can move that over somewhere. Right, what's left? Oh, okay, so I'm going to leave that to last, the plug, because that needs a bit of extra kind of work done to it, purely because of how I've kind of kept it like this. I've kind of positioned it in a bit of an awkward cockeye angle. But for this screw back here, I'm just going to planar project that. Oh, I need to change that back to Z-axis. Gooey. There we go, and I can move that somewhere. Cool. And the plug. So this plug, for now, I guess, just to clean it up, I'm just going to do a planar projection from the Z-axis, sorry, the Y-axis. But for this, I'm going to have to do something a little bit more kind of in-depth. All I'm doing is just literally just laying this out. Now what we've got is a cleaner environment. You can see nothing's in the middle of the UV space, but we've got all our little components off in different areas. So I can organize these in however I want to. So I've got like a little cluster of front panel stuff here. I've got my outside in here, my feet here. So I'll keep these with my board, I guess. My screws I'll put back over here with the back panel stuff. This is a radiator, I believe. Yep, so that's going over here with the back panel stuff. This is from the front. This is part of the front as well. So I'll move this over here. And this is my thing. So it's all very kind of like semi-organized at the minute, but obviously nothing is really finished just yet. This is like stage 1, organization, initial projection. As you can see, what we've done is taken a picture of each one of these objects to clean up the shape, to take it away from that really horrible kind of mess we had at the very beginning. And now it's time for us to actually go in and see what we need to work on more. See if there's anything that's like cool that's done, you know, from the initial projection. Is that kind of completely okay? I can leave it alone, or is there stuff that we need to be doing more to it? Do we need to cut and sew and unfold and all this sort of jazz? So I know for a fact there's 2 elements which are done at this point. It's the carpet section at the front, and it's this whole big back plate here. That's all done for me. That's absolutely done. So these are perfectly good. So I'm going to move these just over to the side. There. So at least I know that they're done. Now we're going to go into something that's a little bit more complex. or something needs a little bit more work done to it. So let's have a look at something like the front panel here. Now this is technically fine, and it's not really going to make much difference to anything, but it is slightly tilted, and we do have the interior faces here that aren't quite visible. Like here, we have got those faces on the inside. Now the tilt I'm not worried about. The fact that this is slightly tilted back, that I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm actually going to leave that alone. However, the little recess face here, I do want to make sure I'm keeping things nice and clean and I'm not cheaping out on any of my UVing. And because this is all kind of connected, and if I try and shrink this down, it's going to make horrible shapes here in my UV space. I'm actually going to cut these away from the main plate, this little recess section. So I'm just going to grab all the faces going around. Cut those, so I'm doing my Shift X in the UV editor. I can drag that off. So I'm taking a little bit of stress off this model now. Also, the back of this is probably going to be just very dark, if not black anyway, because it's just going to be a recess. Now we're almost okay with this, but we have got the problem of the corners here. I've only just done this to expose them. So these corners here. In the real world, they're a 90-degree or close to 90-degree angle, but we can't create that in the UV world at the minute. What we've got to do is just step back a sec. Is I've got to cut these corners here. So I'm going to cut this corner, and then I've got to cut this corner, and go over to the other side. Oops. After this one. After this one. So again, cut and sew. Now, why am I doing this? This is because all I want to do is unfold this object. So allow it to have each one of these smaller faces act as like its own edge. So I've cut these corners away from each other. So this face, oops, sorry, this plane here can fold out flat. This face here can fold out flat without getting pulled and distorted by its neighbor, while still also being connected to the main body. So this is very, very simple. All I'm going to do is come to modify, because I'm unfolding now. Unfold, modify, down to unfold, option box. Now there's two methods of unfolding we have. There's legacy, which is like an old-fashioned way, which is still perfectly good. I use legacy all the time for the majority of the unfolding, actually. And there's unfold 3D. And unfold 3D is kind of like a bit of a, it's trying to do a lot of the back end work for you. So a lot of the stuff we do inside here in the legacy, it tries to do it for you. So all I'm going to do is just make sure I've got my object selected in UV mode, unfold, apply, boom. You see it's kind of tilted it a little bit, but that's fine. You can see now that each one of those corners is nice and flat, and it's been able to be unfolded perfectly fine. And I can run an unfold on this bit as well, because obviously it is technically tilted back in the scene. So you can see there I did an unfold, but it doesn't really do much that I'm concerned about, so I can leave that as is. So we're going to be using the unfold a lot. But we might be using the unfold 3D for some things and the unfold legacy for other things. Cool. Right then. So that's that bit kind of done. So I can move those over here. My nice little finished pile. So let's have a look at this little recess section here, the VU meter. Okay, so we've got kind of a similar thing going on with this. We've got a little recess section. So the back here is the same concept as what we've just done with this little piece down here. Then we've got this frame on the outside as well. So I've got to think, okay, how am I going to approach this? One thing I want to avoid is having frame UVs. The UVs that are square or round but have space in the middle, because that's really hard to fill. So I'm going to do what I can do first of all. So I'm going to look at this. I'm going to look at that. Right, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to cut away this kind of back area here, away from this edge here, like that. And then I'm going to cut the edges in the corner again, but I'm going to make sure I get these top ones here and these ones. And I go around to each corner and do that. This. Because again, it's that stress. Boxes are really easy, really simple to understand this concept. It literally is. If you get a box that's open on one side and you try and push it down, if you try and unfold it without cutting the edges, each one of those corners is going to hold the other corner, and what you have is like this crumpled box that isn't neat. But if you cut each one of those edges, if you cut the areas which is going to cause you the stress, you're able to fold those edges out and it lays out perfectly flat. So I cut those, and then I'm just going to unfold 3D these. So modify, unfold, make sure I've got unfold 3D selected. Boom. Perfect. That's good. Move that over there. So that back panel's done. What about this though? What about this? So this is a bit of an interesting shape because it's got outside and inside varying sizes of faces and varying angles of faces. And if we try and unfold this, it's gonna look okay. And I guess technically you could have this, but what we're doing is we're stretching a lot of stuff. We're stretching edges. We're compressing the edges on the inside and we're extending the edges on the outside. So you see it's like red here and it's blue here. Blue means we're pulling those edges, we're actually stretching them, and red means we're compressing them. So what I want to do instead is increase the amount of UV islands I'm going to deal with, but I'm going to make it neater for me to handle, because one of the rules we have to kind of try and follow, or it's a good rule to follow, you don't have to follow it, is limiting the amount of separate UV islands we have. Currently I have 641. 641? Oh, sorry, no. Not all. 28. 28 UV islands in this whole thing. Did I say this? Not that at all. So it's 28. So I want to bring this UV shells number down as much as I can, but with some things, expect to cut them up into individual chunks so that it can unfold properly. So what I'm going to do is jump back to before you unfolded it, and I'm going to cut these corners. So what I'm going to do is just double click on the corner on the outside, but then deselect the corners that I just cut. So that, deselect those. Because I'm doing this just because it's going to be a real faff to go around and kind of manually select each one of these edges going around the inside. That. Cut those. Now each one of these is its own individual UV. And what I can do is actually show you the other UV method now. Because, how best to explain this? Let's take this long strip here. So we've looked at this from the front. We took a planar projection from the front, so we're getting that width of this object perfect. This width is perfectly good. However, obviously, relative to the front-facing cameras, some of these planes are kind of facing away from the camera or at a bit of a skewed angle. So what I'm going to use is the other UV method. Oh, sorry, the other unfold method. Go to legacy. And all I'm going to change here is where it says unfold constraint. I'm just going to either have vertical or horizontal selected. Now for these two long strips here, because the width is fine, my horizontal aspect is fine. All I want to do is basically fold it out vertically. So I'm going to change that to vertical. I'm going to grab both of them to do this. And I'm going to hit apply, and you're going to see what happens. There you go. Oh, it's thinking. There we go. Do it again. There you go. So it's folded out perfectly. There's no distortion to this. The width is perfect. the height is perfect. Then we can do the same things to these, but because they're the side panels, my height is perfect, but my width isn't. So I'm going to change it to horizontal, and we get the same result. Perfect. Now I'm not going to sew these back together. I'm going to leave these as separate entities. Some people might have you actually have these as all connected, like I did at the beginning, where I just kind of unfolded it to make that little kind of frame. Personally, I like having these as individual strips because one, it makes sure that the UV is nice and neat. It's easier to stack into UV when I'm constructing my UVs and I'm bringing everything together to texture later on. It's easier for me to organize these neatly and space savingly. So I've got a little waste of space as possible. But also, what I can do, thinking very kind of like texturally, is I can actually have the impression that these are actually, you know, 4 pieces of plastic that have been glued together in the corners, and I can do something in the corners, and having these edges here gives you that ability. So they're good. So I'm just going to move those over. Same thing here. This is pretty much identical. Pretty much identical. What I want to do is cut away the bottom kind of sill and then unfold, like find an edge, probably my middle of each one of the corners, to cut those, and then again lay those flat and do one of the unfold legacies. So it's identical to this. First of all, what I want to do is find the right edge to cut away this little frame, which is good there. So I'm going to just separate those out and then find the corners of this. So luckily I put five segments per bevel, so I've got a nice center line there. If you've got a number where you've actually not got a center edge, just choose the top or the bottom one and just make sure you do the same edge on the opposite side. Got that, move on to the side. Got that one, go down. Got that one, go up to the side. Got that one. There we go. So I'll move those closer together. And this is going to be the exact same thing again with all of these pieces, in fact, including the bottom piece here. So I'm going to select all these long pieces. I'm going to use the unfold legacy vertical to unfold. Unfold those. Perfect. And then do the unfold legacy horizontal on these. Perfect. And again, I'm going to arrange these so they're nice and close. And just be nice and neat with stuff. I kind of like pre-pack things together as little groups as well while I'm doing this. So as I'm working through, you've seen that I'm kind of already kind of packing things together. So again, that I can move stuff around in little groups, especially if I know that these bits are contained together, these bits are contained together. I'll probably have these two elements close to each other because I can imagine these are made out of very similar, if not the same material. So on the texture, I would have a little zone that would be just this kind of, you know, goldy plastic material or whatever I'm going to have for it. Right there, kind of made my, like I pre-packed things a little bit, being a bit organized. Cool. What else have we got for the front? Well, let's see. We've got these 2 bits. So my 2 little should have been pre-made elements. I'm probably going to take the back of these. So I've been leaving those in the entire time because I always like thinking that just what if a audience member sees behind something? Normally like chair legs or table legs or anything that connects to a wall or something that you definitely know the audience is going to see behind, I often take away that back face. With this though, I kind of second guess myself and thought to leave it in. But now that I've actually got the UVs in there and I'm actually thinking about it a bit more, I've decided no, I'm not going to do that. I am actually going to take these back faces away because they're going to be hidden. Same for the dial. So what I'm going to do, and this is actually going to make my UV life a whole lot easier. I'm going to grab this face, get rid of it. And at the back, I'm going to just get rid of this whole triangle area here. Make sure I've not over selected. Check not, and then delete. There we go. Now this is going to make my life a little bit easier for my UVing because I've not got faces at the back which also then need to be unfolded and that are going to cause like stress and kind of going to pull edges. So let's have a think. Let's experiment with this one. Let's just give an unfold 3D on this one just to see what happens. Unfold 3D. Okay. I can see that's kind of messed up a little bit. I can look at the checkerboard. I can see that, yeah, we're getting some distortion. So here is where I'd have to, experiment's really good, but then I can make a judgment call thinking, oh, probably not. So what I'm going to do instead is cut these two bits at the beginning because I'm also looking at like, what are the major angles of this surface? Well, we've got like the front with the two faces either side and then the flat side here. So what I'm going to do is cut the two flat sides away first, like that. I can unfold these because they're just going to unfold perfectly fine. They're really, really small at first, but in fact, you know what I can do? I can just grab these and do an automatic projection just to get a simple layout of those like that. Cool. But for this, what I want to do is do a vertical unfold. So I'm not using that unfold 3D. If I do that, it looks okay, but you can see it's kind of pulling in at the edges, and it's also kind of it kind of changes its orientation. So what I want to do is just go into my vertical, because again, my width ways at the minute is fine. It's going to change in a second, but my width way, it's okay. My height, that's the one that's kind of really bugging me, my vertical axis. The fact that I'm losing two faces here. Because remember, this comes from a planar projection. To do that, I get this. This is looking perfect. If I look at this now, this is perfect. A little bit of distortion here, obviously. But what I can do is, again, unfold and then do a horizontal. Do that. So things are almost perfect. Almost perfect. But then what I'm going to do is align these edges, these lines of UVs to be straight on both sides. This is super easy, and also like from the top. This is very, very easy to do. It all sits inside our menu on the side here on the right, align and snap, and you've got these lovely little alignment tools at the very top. So going from left to right, it's align to the furthest left UV, align to the middle UV, align to the furthest right UV, align to the highest UV, to the middlest UV, to the lowest UV. So if I'm going vertically first, I'm just going to grab all the outside edges here of UVs and align to the left. Do the same thing here. So grab all these, align to the left, and then grab these, align to the left. Now these ones are obviously going to go to the right. So I'm going to align to the right, align to the right, align to the right, straighten it up a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but using the vertical, the highest and lowest alignment. So grab all these top ones, align up, align up, align up, and then align down, align down, align down. Perfect. Yes, there is a tiny bit of distortion in the corners here, but what this is giving me is a really, really nice solid shape. And these two little shapes here, I'm actually going to leave them off because what these will actually do is like heavily distort my my UV, which again I'm trying to keep things as neat as possible. I won't always make everything rectangular. I will sometimes allow things to be a little bit more kind of amorphous, especially when we're dealing with organic shapes. We kind of want that bend and curve that you get from organic living surfaces. But for this, that's totally fine because that can also fix any seam work. It's going to be a basic ivory type kind of plastic kind of thing. So we're not going to get much detail in here. It's not going to be much to cause an issue. So for now, I'm going to move this down here. That's done. And the last one is this. Now, what I'm going to do, sorry, just one second, chat. What I'm going to do is do a cylindrical unwrap on this one because we're dealing with something which is very cylindrical and it is a bit of an angle as well. But that's easy for us to deal with. But then we've also got the top section here. It's all top ring section. So me knowing what I want to do with this, I know that I'm going to have to not planar, not cylindrical project everything at the same time. Because what I'm also going to do is cut the UV up a little bit to allow me to have a nice solid control over materials so that materials don't blend onto each other, textures don't blend onto each other. So I've kind of already pre-done it already. I'm going to select all the UVs at the top, which I know that I don't want to be cylindrically projected. And then I'm going to hold shift and drag a selection box over while I'm in focus mode. Because that does, it reverses the selection. You can see there I've got all those selected, and then I hold shift, I drag a selection box over, and then everything else but that top bit is selected. So now what I'm going to do is do that cylindrical projection. I'll click the cylindrical projection. Boom. So you see there, yes, I did planar project this at the very beginning to move it out of the way, to kind of get a bit of a better shape, to get to be able to select certain things. But now I'm going back in there and re-projecting it because now I'm taking my time concentrating on this particular object. Make sure that this is, really, really nice. So I've done my planar projection. It looks horrendous. It don't look anything like what I want it to. That's because this planar projection, cylindrical projection, is almost like standing up vertically. Whereas this object is standing obviously not vertically. So what I want to do is reorient this UV projection to map across this to sit in line with this. And that's very, very easy to do. All your basic projections by your the automatic projection doesn't have this feature. But your planar, cylindrical, and your spherical have all got this little red X somewhere on the projector. Oops. This little red X somewhere on the projector. And if I click that, I'm able to get in there and actually get into the controls. So you can see there it actually affects the way that the projection's mapping. What I'm going to do is click the blue square on the outside, which is going to give me access to the rotation. And then I'm going to start rotating this around. And you see how the projection kind of starts to warp and move. I'll grab the right axis this time. And I'm going to try and get as close as I can. So that's looking pretty good to me. Still a little bit wobbly, but that's fine. But we can see here that we're getting an overhang on the on the right, but then a cut out of the left. Well, obviously that's, if we look here, remembering that that white line denotes where a slice is, or a cut is, you can see that it's kind of oriented wrong. Also, this is orientated, the cut's in the wrong area. The cut's in a place where, audience member will be able to see. So I'm going to move this, I'm going to rotate this projection around so the cut is at the bottom. So I start to rotate this around. I'm looking to see those white lines become there. Perfect. So you see they're very, very easily done. And you can also, if you need to, you can also scale and do all sorts of stuff with it. But I just want to get a basic layout first, so I can just start messing with it a bit more. So I'm going to run a vertical legacy unfold on this. Just like that. It's going to get look a little bit weird, but then I'm going to also align it. So a bit of prep work to do the next stage. Because what I'm going to do is make it to a rectangle like I did with this. I'm going to make it a nice rectangle. And then I'm going to cut all the different elements off because I know that I want this barrel here to be a certain kind of material. I want this bottom bit to be a certain type of material, and I want this bit to be a certain type of material. So what I'm going to do is literally just use that alignment tool in the line snap to do the exact same thing again. So I'm going to go, everything here is going to be aligning downwards, and everything up here is going to be aligning upwards. It doesn't really matter if it's perfectly, like if it's destroying the checkerboard so much, because I'm just using it to make it a bit cleaner for myself to then work on later on. Okay, so boom. Line down. Beautiful. And then do the top, line up. And this is just a nice repetition, using the same tool over and over again, getting used to the tool. It's quite nice. Cool. That's good. So now that I've got this, then I'm going to start cutting off these elements. So where is this edge here? So I'm looking on the actual 3D model and I'm looking to see where I want to put this cut. Where does the material change from the barrel to this kind of little collar shape? Where I'm thinking probably there. So I can cut that off. And then definitely there. Kind of want to cut this here because this is going to be another material. And altogether, that's cool. Now again, the only reason why I'm doing this is purely because I want to have nice, clean separation of materials. I can, in Substance Painter, obviously go in there and fill polygons with a specific UV and stuff like that, or a specific material and stuff. But if these things are connected to another UV that is sharing another material, when you bring down the resolution of this object, that's when, or bring down resolution of your text, I should say, that's when, because these two things are sharing the same edge, and they're actually technically connected, your textures start to bleed, your materials start to bleed, the pixels bleed into each other. So by doing this, I'm just giving myself a really nice sharp separation between the things. And last thing to do is just solve the alignment vertically. So I'll find the center line. Okay, so everything left of the center line, so this is my center line here. Everything left of here is being aligned to the left, and everything right is being aligned to the right. So again, doing the same thing. And I'm pressing G for gamma, on the keyboard to repeat last tool. Because my last used tool was the align to the left. Oops, I grabbed a over grab there. There we go. And then do the same thing to the right. So grab everything and do to the right. Oops. Careful about over grabbing. There we go. Perfect. Checkerboard looks all right. You know, I can deal with that. Some of the distortion I'm going to have to deal with because when you get to these cylindrical objects or rounder objects, to keep a nice even UV layout and keep a nice even UV shape, sometimes you've got to have a little bit of distortion in there. But also, this is a smaller object, so the distortion is not going to be as noticeable. So now I can grab this, move it over here. Again, I'm not worried about the textile density yet. I'm going to wait with that. I'm going to fix all that later on. I also put this with it here because obviously lives with these. And that's all that section done. So you can see there that was quite a large chunk of you being done. But all we're really doing is obviously playing our projecting out however we want to do it at first to lay it out. And then we're going in there and we're looking at these different objects, looking and we're analyzing, okay, how do I think I can unfold this correctly? What's the base shape? Do I need to reproject it? Is it something I can just cut the edges to take away the stress and then do an unfold on? So for instance, let's do the radiator, then let's do the frame. So we'll do the radiator. This is a similar kind of problem. It's a simple-ish kind of shape, but there's a lot of stress. It's like you've got a box shape on the base of the object, like here, but then, so that's going to cause its own issues. But then you've got a box shape at the top, like this whole top, it's a box shape. So how do we kind of deal with this? Well, what I'm thinking of doing is cutting away about halfway around this box shape from the I guess the base plate. We have this. Yeah. Okay. So this is also where we do some experimentation. So what I'm going to do is, because I've got this frame here. Now this, I'm kind of going to eat my own words here. This isn't a bad one to have because This is quite a big frame. What I've got. So obviously this is a hole. This is an empty void now. Um, this isn't a bad one to have because it's a large frame. I can actually put stuff inside here. The reason why I broke this one up here is because it was a very small frame and I could fit nothing inside there. It'd just be an empty space. This one I can actually use, but let's just kind of keep going because I might end up doing it again. So let's cut those corners, those small corners there. And then I can just run that unfold 3D. Oh, that's the wrong unfold, so yeah, unfold 3D. Or I could just run the legacy, but just do them both. So do a vertical unfold like that, and then do a horizontal unfold. There we go. Then I've kind of got to see how this reacts to stuff. So what I want to do as well is flip it. I want to flip this. I've done there to modify and flip. It'll flip it so it's actually facing the UV's facing the forward direction. I want to see how that, if I unfold it, how that affects the UV. Okay, as you can see there, we've got a lot of distortion there on the edge. So what I'm going to do here, this is coming into some awkward shapes we have to make inside UVing sometimes. I'm going to cut up to the corner of each one of these, like where you get this like little 3 meeting point here. I'm going to cut towards there. Like that. So now everything's perfectly fine. All I've got to do here then later on, inside when I'm texturing, is just make sure that I'm fixing up any issues that might appear in the corners here. But I'm figuring I want to put some stickers on this. I want to do some nice texturing here on this little radiator. So I want to make sure that one, there's as fewer individual seams. So what I'm not going to do is cut each one of the sides off away from each other, so it's a completely like broken apart model like this. I'm not going to do anything like that. But I want to take the stress away from the corner because this is going towards that kind of box shape. That's why I've just done that. Just allowed those edges to kind of fold out. Same for this. And like I said, I can use this as kind of like a little bit of a holder for stuff, like the bits here. So this is my foot, I believe. Let's flip this, and then I just need to do an unfold 3D. For that, that's all I need to do. For the foot, that, oh no, sorry, that's a donut shape. Yeah, that's all I need to do for that. I just need to unfold 3D, boom. It's a tiny, tiny element. It's not going to cause me any issues. So I can just put that inside here. It's going to be like a very very simply textured object that. Now, my screws. So with this as well, I'm just going to go in here and see if I can just, so number one, I want to take this plate off, this face off the back. And I probably want to do the same thing on the back of the screw. Oh no, the screw's not got one anyway. Cool. Now with this, I'm going to be, I could be a little bit, not lazy, but I could not necessarily worry too much about how these unfold. So for the washer at the back, I'm just going to unfold 3D that. That's all I need to do. You can see there, I've got my edges just exposed, and I'm control Uing this as well. So whatever my last used unfold is, will be the hotkey for this. So control U will do, in this case, the unfold 3D because that was the last thing I did. Like that. Let's see how this works out. I'm going to make an executive decision to be okay with this shape. Because again, it's a very, very small shape. I don't want to break something this small up into multiple different little chunks if I can help it. So I'm just going to keep it like this. Yeah, just kind of bring it in. Like this. you see as well, I'm pre-packing stuff, so I'm kind of scaling stuff down, pre-packing it in here. So if I can have this full of stuff, I'm going to be happy. Backplate this. This can just be flipped, kind of brought over. Not worried too much about that textile density thing as well just yet. Right, so I did mention in class that I wanted to do something a little bit special with these. And the main thing is what I want to do is kind of show the fact that this is made out of something like particle board. So I want to have like this be the cross section of cardboard or something. Same down here. For this, I want to be able to see like if this is stained particle board, I want to be able to see the unstained particle board inside here. So what I'm going to do, I'll do this on the top corner first, like that. Is again, I'm going to cut this bit away so that I've only got this bit on its own, and all this bit. I'm just going to unfold 3D. I'm not going to unfold 3D. I'll unfold 3D at first. See what I get. Okay. Okay. It's not particularly nice, but this is kind of a small area. There are times as well when sometimes you just got to have a bit of a nasty UV. For one, limit the amount of separate UV ions you've got, and two, because there's no point faffing over or stressing over something that kind of small and inconspicuous. The most important thing though is this. So what I'm going to do is re-project this. We're using the automatic projection to get strips like this. So what I've done there is I've done my automatic projection. It's down here, but it's projecting up here as well. And I can drag this over. And it has done this in 2 bits, but if I just sew these back together, so I think this is the first time we're sewing. So I want to sew this back together to make a long strip. A long uninterrupted strip. So then I just want to go down to, again, cut and sew, move and sew, put that together, boom, we're done with that one. Like that. And then pretty much do the same thing with this, but I want to be a little bit more careful with this one. So I'm going to cut across, cut out this, and then again do the automatic projection, like that, bring it over, and then sew that back together. But with this, what I want to do is look for, kind of find an edge which is going to be hidden away from the audience. So again, if I'm thinking the audience is going to be looking from this kind of angle, one of the underside cuts is going to be perfect for me. So what I'm going to do is select round, but just don't select this one edge. Yeah. Move down a little bit. So this is a little bit more of a faff, but we've done this whole thing all over before. What I'm going to do is cut these corners first. Well, I'm going to select these corners, and then I'm going to think about how I can bring this cut inwards. Now, for me, this is looking simple, because if I do this, cut all these corners into like this, I get the same thing as I did with my recessed UV reader and stuff. And then I can just unfold this, and I get this kind of shape, which for me is perfect. There you go. So I can just bring them together and move these around with these. So you can see right there, that's the same stuff I've been doing with all this stuff over here. And like, see, I'm kind of going in the stages. So stage 1 was obviously project everything down, not necessarily worrying if it was perfect or if it was necessarily the right projection, just projecting it away. Second stage is going through and spending some time with these UVs and cutting them up, sewing them up, getting them laid out so the checkerboard's looking good, so that they are readable, so that we're exposing all the edges we want to expose. And then third stage would be the refinement to make sure all the textile density is correct. Make sure I do a final pass to make sure everything's actually making sense. So what I'm going to do is just stop the video for a sec, do some, well, I guess I'll do like a time lapse of it. I'll do some more work and I'll come back and kind of explain briefly what I've done. So I'm just not kind of explaining over and over and over again. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of jump back and talk about what exactly I'm doing here and why I've just done what I've done. So at the base of this here, the base of the plug, I decided to automatically unwrap or automatically project all these elements. And then I proceeded to cut everything up. So I went in there and selected all the different mass shells and then just Shift X them to cut them all into individual strips. Now, why am I doing this? This is because what the planar projection, what the automatic projection giving me, and what I'm in my head envisioning I want to do with this are two different things. But now that I'm actually doing that, I'm actually second guessing myself. So again, these things happen all the time. So what I was going to do is actually cut them all on, cut them all individually, and then kind of sew them all. And it looks really messy at first when I start doing it. Sew them all on together like that. But what I'm doing there is destroying the vertical edge here. So actually, I'm actually going to step back. So why I stopped the video for a sec, that's not why I'm stopping it anymore. I'm going to re-sew these together, except for one bottom edge there. I'm going to sew all these together like this, so one big long strip. And then all the smaller faces here that I have cut up individually, I'll then sew them on individually. So kind of the same thing as I was doing, but instead of sewing all these bits onto the circle, I'm going to sew all these bits onto this strip. But I just want to straighten this out. It's a little bit crooked. Like that. And now what I can do is basically grab all these, sew them on, sew them on, sew them on. So right there, it's been doing big sews. I'm grabbing all one edge, sewing everything onto there, pressing the G because the last used tool was moving sew, and then I've just got to go in there at the end because of what I don't want to do. I want to stop here because at this point, I'm going on to this barrel, which I don't want to be touching at the minute. But if I zoom in, I'm going to see that just at the end, I'm going to have these little V's that I just need to sew together. There we go. There you go. So I've just run like a little UV straighten function there. About that. There we go. So that's much nicer. So quite often what I'll do, if I've got a lot of like little bits, like little faces like this that turn up in like circles where I'm to be straight, what I'll do is I'll cut the entire circle shape into individual little faces, and then I will sew them all individually on. Not one by one. I'm going to like select an entire edge and sew them all off that edge, then select another edge and select. so the entire kind of edge and sew them on there. But then that gives me a nice straight edge there. Much nicer UVs. I've just got to deal with this seam, that's all. I've just got to deal with this bit here. And this as well. So you saw what I did with these is basically took the projection that I had, cut the top off, cut a line down the middle, unfolded them. So I've got these two little shapes and these two little discs. I'm just going to turn these into rectangles again because these aren't too bad a shape, but I'd rather have them a little more like rectangular and organized for something like this. So I'm going to do select all these down the side as per usual, align to the left, align to the right, align to the oops, align to the right, the left, align to the right, and then do the ones on the inside, left, left. Oh, was I doing right there? Right to the left. There we go. And then align to the right on the opposite side. Oops. Just do the alignment again. And again, I'm pressing G to do the repeated last tool, which is the alignment. Helps speed up my workflow. There we go. And then these, I'm just going to kind of scale up kind of to the right size. I'm going to rotate them around and kind of measure the edge. That. I'm just going to sew them on like that. There we go. So they're my little connectors. I've got this, so that was just simple, selecting the faces on the inside there, do a automatic projection, like that. So the last thing I'm going to do is just this, a little box, the main feature. So what am I going to do with this? Well, I'm going to do the same kind of thing I've been doing throughout. I'm going to make these long strips, but not too long because this is going to be a large object. And I don't want to have to smush this UV down to a very, very small area. In fact, again, just kind of looking at stuff and analyzing, I think I could get away with things being separated like this, but I'm just going to sew the smaller sides here, these little frames, sew them back on. But then cut them off and sew them back on. You'll see what I mean in a sec. Okay, yeah, I think I'll do that because then I'll be able to fit these in a nice square, have a nice large resolution to them. So what I'm going to do is follow whatever the cut is here. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to force this cut here in the middle corner of each of these. Because again, we've got those 5 segments here. What if I cut in the middle? So I'm going to force a cut in the middle of there and then sew the edge that has already been cut back on. So I'll cut those and then sew that edge back on. Same on the other side. Cut that, move it across. Like that. Same underneath. Yeah, same underneath. So grab that middle segment there. Cool. And then I just need to actually sew this edge back on. Same for the outside as well. Oh, I've got to do the inside up there as well. So a lot of, again, just repetition. Because our geometry is very, very simple and based off primitive shapes. There might be a lot of like the same thing repeated over and over again. Because it's quite quick to do, especially when we're using that G for last tool kind of trick. Because my last used tool was sew, move and sew, so that move and sew, move and sew, comma, so that speeds up my workflow. That's a good rhyme. There we go. So all I've done there is just make sure everything's nice and even, nice and equal. Make sure that I'm also cutting across this diagonal edge here so that I can take an edge and sew them. Where did you go? Oh, you went there. There you go. In fact, you know what? I'm actually going to do that trick I was talking about before because we have got a corner here. We have a little bit of a corner. And I think it'll be a nice little demonstration about how useful that little technique is. So what I'm going to do is cut all of these up into individual chunks. So I'm just grabbing them in face mode, Shift X. Now they're all individual pieces. And I'm going to sew these onto the outside, but like one piece at a time essentially. So I'm going to start off with this edge here, which is right there. I'm going to sew it on. I grab the next one in line, sew it on. I need to move this to the side a sec. So you can see what edges correspond here. Now what I'm going to do is not sew this edge. So I sew this last one, like that. So it's the same thing on the other side. And what I'm doing is that I did that really, really quick, just because I know that I'm only going to be sewing one edge on. So I just like literally dragged a selection box over this area. And because this thinner blue line is already sewed on, it's not going to do anything. So super quick, I can just sew that back on. And I can do the same thing down here. And sew these back on, sew them together. Come up to the top, do the same thing. And then when I've made that strip, I go in and then sew them back together. Yes, I've got little bumps at the end, but I'm going to fix them up in a second. It's a very, very quick process. So why I broke them up, again, is just because when I sewed them on originally, yeah, I was maintaining the shape, but I had these little like wings sticking off, and I would have these little seams in the corner there. Would be a little bit annoying to have. So what I did was decided, right, you know what, I'm going to sew them back on. I'm going to make sure they're actually part of this edge. There's going to be a tiny bit of distortion there, but it's going to be very, very unnoticeable because it's not that much distortion in the grand scheme of things. So still got a bunch to do, but you see that process is so fast that if we just select an edge there, we find it. Okay, so it's this edge, we can just go in there and just start, you know. So just keeping an eye on what edges I'm doing, so I'm not doing the wrong bits. I'll do both sides at the same time. See there, I'm grabbing, because I know that this is going to be the same thing on the front here and the back here. And I'm literally just grabbing both sides because, again, it's a nice even surface. Super cool. And these little shapes get deleted or depleted, reconnected really, really fast. So boom. Oops. Okay, so oh, there it is. Yeah. So see, we're just gradually pulling down them numbers. So I often do this. I often cut up smaller UVs into individual like UV faces to then sew them back onto a bigger UV to maintain the main UV, the big UV's overall shape, rather than risk kind of distorting the shape. This one might be a bit funky because it's just a bit of a weird connection, a bit of a weird area. There we go. It's better. What's the last one? What's the last one? Oh, there we go. Boom. Okay, so a lot of big actions being done there. All I did there was break up those frames, those little kind of like square shapes, into individual faces to then sew them back onto the main object. Um, where you would do this is place like this, like this, frames where you've got smaller areas on the outside here. So this is quite a small area, but then you've got a large area here. But then you've got this curve to deal with here as well. So if I was to just sew this on, I'd have a seam. Like if I was to have this as a, so if I just like literally go back and reproject this really, really quick. Oops. No, I won't do that. Yeah, if you were to sew something like I did at the beginning, where I did put a cut here, I'd have a gap between these two edges, which might be visible. So all I did was sew them back on, but I did it individually so that I wasn't making too much of a mess. Because if you have like a straight shape and then a curved shape, and you sew them two things back together, if they are actually connected in the real world, it can distort the overall shape. But I want to maintain the main surface, this top surface. So if I cut everything up, like if I cut all this kind of corner section up, I'm sewing individual faces on it. It's not going to change this overall large shape's general shape. Again, with that, I'm just selecting like big old areas of edges and hitting G for the last use tool, which I make sure it's the move and sew. I can quickly fire through and sort those out. And I can do other stuff as well at this point. I could see what a unfold 3D will look like. So you can see how this face here wants to curve out, wants to curl away, and it's pulling these shapes with it, which I don't really want. So what we'll have to do here is, again, just go through and do that align and snap stuff like I did before to make sure these are all nice and rectangular. And then overall, that is just it. I'd have to go through and find certain bits. What do you? Oh, you're the foot. Okay. What are you then? Oh, you're that bit. Okay. So yeah, overall, this stage done. I'm going to cut the video short here as well because it's obviously going to be a long video at this stage. The next bit of this would just be to do a last pass refinement, see if there's anything that really needs changing, or see if I can second guess myself, and then start thinking about material groups, what we're going to be sending into Sketchfab, and then bringing everything down, arranging them into the UV space, and also sorting out the textile density so that everything is the right size, so the pixels are going to be consistent throughout the entire model. So yeah, I'm going to cut this one here because I think this video is going to be over an hour and a half, unfortunately. Sorry. The next one will be a lot shorter. It'll just be us arranging stuff.